Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
And now we're recording. Aidan Wachter, welcome back to Weird Web Radio, my brother. It's good to have you.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here again.
Always. Anyway, okay. Well, thanks for being here. That'll be all, folks. No,
it's a quickie.
Yeah, a little
This is
right?
magical podcast when you don't have any time, but you want to hear a magical podcast.
And that's a wrap. Magic's true. I guess first things first, I know that you've got a piece in the new anthology that just came out. This is it sitting across the room? Of course, I planned that really well. This is Chaos. Yeah. With Pope Pete Carroll back out from his shadowy lab of trying to prove magic is physics.
Whatever turns your crank.
Yeah. How's the response to that going? Are you getting some feedback or anything from your essay in there?
Yeah, so far good. It's as kind of goes. It's what I get is mostly from people that are in my sphere already, so they already tend to have some use for what I think about this shit anyway.
That's fair.
General is, but Dennis at Foolish Fish said really nice things about his review of it, I'm gonna forget because he's kind of new on my thing. Is it? You will know maybe, and then we can erase this part if I can.
That's right. Keep looking at me like that and psychically send it to me.
Freeman, occult detective.
Occult detective.
Is that who it is?
I got to
look it up because I'm going to feel terrible if we didn't. I really apologize to you if I do not remember.
I presume it's a cool show or something. If you
he's got a YouTube channel. I think he's got a podcast.
Occult detective.
Let's see if I can.
I'm always on the lookout for a new one to listen to because everybody out there making content like I do, I know how hard the work is and how many hours it goes into all this, and we don't do it as frequent as I would like to listen either.
Yeah, Bob Freeman, occult detective.
Okay.
He did a video on it and said really nice things about my part in there. So good. I was worried, Bob. I don't like to get people's names wrong, and I did not prepare for that question.
Shout out, Bob.
Lonnie did not tell me what we were going to talk about. So
no, I never do.
Thanks for the kind words. For
the record, everyone that is on this show never gets notes beforehand. Never. And you've been here, 6 or 7 times now? You should know better.
I know it's not. I know I don't know what's coming.
So in that anthology, you're pretty much, I like the way you wrote it. You're like, hey, I don't know why I'm in here anymore because this is about chaos magic. But if y'all like spirits, I'm into spirits.
It was funny. I mean, I mentioned this to when I was talking to Sanre from the Order of Chaos podcast that we did, and he's also got an article in there.
That was a great episode, by the way. So shout out to those peeps. That was really good.
That was a really good time. It is funny because it's like I was surprised when Jack reached out. I mean, they reached out through you because I was still in my cloak of invisibility.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So Jack Hawkins reached out to you to see if you knew how to find me.
Yeah.
Since I was invisible, and that's what led to that. And I was surprised, and I was surprised all the way through submitting it and sending it to Pete. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be of interest to them,
Right.
And Pete wrote back and said, I really like this. This is great. Thanks.
Nice. I like that. Cool. Maybe he'll wiggle on over to this more spirit side of things now.
Nah,
I doubt it, but
not happening. But he's at least open to it, which is the main thing that I love. Is he's very open.
That's true. Be like, Pete, your vials are haunted too. No. What else did I want to get into today? Witch, the title Witch. I have heard you throwing this thing around like you just arrived with the best new outfit.
That's been a few years.
I know you have flirted with the idea, and you've been
It's been a few years.
You know, we talked about it some when you were when you had Changeling come out.
Yes.
But it seems to me that you really are kind of more and more identifying along those lines a little bit. And I'm curious now, you know, not Changeling era, but now, after you went through that hiatus and a lot of self-care and a lot of self-healing and stuff, and you've come back onto the scene doing a lot of great work, what's Witch mean to you now?
You know, it's an interesting question. I would say that the biggest thing that happened to me was what occurred with the allies around the Changeling time, when they were like, hey, dude, this has always been a major part of your scene, and you've been overly cautious to not step on people's toes, because my take is a little to the side for some folks and probably a lot to the side for some others. And they were kind of like, fuck that, because it's important to open this up a little bit from it's like anything, any idea or any term or any title or any genre, whether that's music or whatever, it can get kind of calcified around a few things.
Yeah.
And I think that is where their take was. Like, there are probably some folks that would like to find something that's a little bit other than what the usual description of this is, that also are connected to that, but don't feel comfortable maybe claiming that.
Yeah.
So that's still really present. For me, what's more the thing is I'm interested in kind of, and this goes back to that idea of kind of genre calcification. I want to crack that open. And this has been true, I think, since 6 Ways at least, is I'm not really interested in like pandering and catering are not the right words, but they're like, because there's like an edge there that is not what I feel. We're in a point in time where, due to the internet and due to the way that publishing works, there is a push to really hardline everything, to say this is this and this is not it. And for people to say, I know the right way to do this because it came from my lineage, my teacher, whatever. And I don't care about any of that.
Sure.
None of that, it seems relevant to me at all. I do totally see real issues with cultural appropriation, but often what I see called out by that is more performative than actually concerned about the reality of that.
Have you got an example? Just curious. That's a topic that I think people, when they hear cultural appropriation, I think they know what they mean, but I'm not sure that they do.
What I see is, to me, is it's like, so I have connection to, or I have had connection to, let's just use as an example that's very old, to the Loire in a particularly New Orleans aspect that I did not seek out. It came to me through the fact, I think, that I was hanging around with a bunch of people that were connected to New Orleans voodoo. And for their own reasons, some of those spirits connected to me and said, hey, will you do these things for us? And this was a very long conversation. It was months, because I was like, this isn't my thing. Why are you not talking to your people? You know? And they were like, because it's not really what we want to talk to them about. It's like, this is fucking strange. You know, I was 22 or something, you know, I was a baby. And But eventually we got to a place where I was comfortable with what they were asking and that I had enough information and that I accepted that what I was dealing with was what it was presenting as. And that I was like, cool, I will do that, but we're not going to do it the way that you want to. Because they were like transactional.
Mm-hmm.
You do this, we'll give you this. I'm like, like, we're going to do this entirely cleanly. I will just do this for you because you are asking.
Mm-hmm.
And because we've had this long-term conversation. And so I performed some work, and they were satisfied with that and moved on. I see no issues with that.
Same.
There are a lot of folks that in the current milieu would say, oh, why are you involved with these things outside of your culture, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
This is why I said, I'm not going in there with you. I am not going to do this because it didn't make sense to me due to who I am to try and move into this culture, whether it's the New Orleans version, Dominican version, Haitian version. Voodoo is not my world.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the cultural appropriation it would be the people that have that experience and go, this means I'm a badass mambo or hungan. And now I'm going to go sell this. And I'm going to go build my career off of this. That to me is cultural appropriation.
Agreed.
Magic, if you believe particularly in the spirit world as real, this means they get to decide what they do.
Yes.
And from my side of it, they don't have the same boundaries a lot of the people who believe in them, follow them, worship them, think they should. This is a thing. It's not my thing. It's somebody else's thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so to me, it becomes that. Like, I trained fairy for 6 months. I then had lots of connects with fairy. If I were to go out, I'm going to teach you fairy stuff. I'm appropriating something I have no right to. I was never initiated. That's an initiatory tradition. That's appropriation. Now, a lot of people say it's not cultural appropriation because it's a bunch of freaky people all over the world, right? It's not tied in. But to me, it's the same story. And so and I'm not even sure how we got going in here really, but to me, that's the issue there is it's like, are you being respectful to the reality of the traditions, to the reality of the cultures? I know a bunch of white folks who have been initiated into African, Cuban, South American magical traditions. And I know folks who want to go after them for cultural appropriation. And to me, it's like, you need to go after that person's initiatory line then.
Right.
Because they believed this was legit. And they're the line holder. And so that, to me, that's the concerns there are you, it's not, are you stepping on toes? Because that's about kind of emotionality. It's like, are you misrepresenting yourself? And it's difficult right now because, we have like, as some friends of mine have pointed out recently, a ton of material on various cultural traditions that, because of the way and kind of the inherent racism in our culture that extends into publishing, tend to not be written by the folks that are within those traditions in the way that I think would make the most sense.
Right.
If I'm learning a Brazilian religious tradition, I want to learn it from somebody who grew up in Brazil at least, because there's cultural context missing. This doesn't mean that somebody that is initiated within that tradition does not have the right to teach.
That's right.
If that's part of what they get from that initiation. and it's
Mhm.
there's legit channels, but it's very tricky. But I think people can get performative about it, and it's usually, I don't think, for the reasons that they claim.
Mm.
It's usually, how do I kind of disempower somebody else by
Yeah.
finding a way to poo-poo what they're doing. And it's not that it's not tricky, it's not that it's not real. It happens all the fucking time. It's it's even in the book that I'm working on now. It's interesting because it's like, I would like to reference some other aspects of ancestor work in the book, but I haven't been able to find sources that I'm 100% comfortable putting forward. And it's not that I don't think that those sources are good. It's just a kind of like, can't I get the closer in voice? And so I'm searching,
Yeah.
Because I'm very aware that there is no amount of, this is like the easiest one, there's no amount of study I could do that would give me Dara Mason's understanding of things Irish and British, having grown up in that world. I cannot get there. And likewise, there's no way I could hand him the information to like grasp my stupid stoner California punk rock thing. You can't get there.
Yeah.
And so it's very tricky. But I think we're kind of hopefully moving more into nuance, and it more just depends on where you're at. And this is not to say I totally am down with anybody that's got we need people to teach.
Yes.
But there are definitely grifters. And my issue is not with the people who are legitimately teaching shit that they legitimately have been given the okay to teach within literal closed traditions, not these fantasies of closed traditions, which are also running all over the place. There's shit that people believe are closed traditions that have never been closed traditions.
Heathenry being one of them.
Right, exactly. It's like, you just go, what are you even talking about? These people were mongrels, and I'm super mongrel, and so I try and stay out of all of that as much as possible. And also just because what I do is a little bit to the side, and our goals are to the side of that. I don't have a lineage I'm teaching. I don't have a tradition I'm teaching. I don't have a system I'm teaching. I'm offering some views that make sense for me and my allies and my spirits. It makes sense for us to share. And we think there's value in that. And so, but it's, I'm very aware of it, because there's shit that it's like, I could easily go, oh yeah, let's pull this up. And you go, okay, how legit is that? The information in that book is correct. How legit is this person? It's very hard to tell.
Very hard.
And it's going to get worse and worse as people are learning from what are essentially AI generated Reader's Digest versions of everything. Which is weird to go like, oh yeah, you could theoretically right now fill your library and learn entirely with shit that was generated by generative AI. And that is not the same thing as learning from people.
No.
And it cannot be,
Yeah, I think about, oh man, because I think about a lot of that stuff constantly, in part because of this show. I try to be mindful about who I allow on here to talk about certain things and traditions. And when it gets into African traditional religions and hoodoo and voodoo and things like that, it's a minefield of figuring out who's legit and who isn't. And some of the folks I would love to talk to, if you are one of those folks out there and you would like to talk about your tradition, I'm always game to hear what you have to say. At least reach out to me, by email, and we'll start a conversation and see if we can get something going, because it's a beautiful tradition. It needs more exposure. or maybe they don't want exposure. I don't know. I make no assumptions. But in the wider context of all this, one thing I think about a lot is the historical context of this. And you go back to like the late antiquity period, when you had Jews and Christians and Muslims and the surviving, still practicing Egyptian religions, and the melting pot that was that era, right? And one of the things that comes out of that era is the god Hermanubis. And we know Hermanubis was sort of this blend of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Anubis or Anpu. And he was worshipped, had temples for a few centuries at least. But what we don't know, and I wonder all the time, was the first time someone rolled that out, how'd that work? And what was the reaction to people? Like how did the culture in that region respond to this sudden new god? Because we know people were very syncretic, but to what point did people like call bullshit on something even back then? I want to know that so bad.
Well, this ties kind of directly into something that we've been talking about a bit in the Discord server connected to my Patreon, which is what I call aspecting. And this is just a term that I started using. It may have roots in this shit. I don't know. I used to read a lot. I don't anymore. And so for aspecting, to me, is like a way of kind of figuring out. There's a lot of folks that really believe, and I'm making air quotes around believe, in the gods or the spirits as archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an interesting little kind of language conundrum for me, because you go, well, for a lot of people, the archetype thing is talking about kind of a psychological construct or a mental construct. This is not necessarily always what it means, right? It gets very
right.
tricky. And so sometimes you don't know what you're talking about here, because is this person viewing this as in like a strict Jungian light? Or are they speaking of it more in a very new agey light? Where we get into kind of, and we've talked about this many times, kind of like the horrors of the correspondence world, where you go, oh yeah, well, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this lady over here, and this lady over here, they're all Hermes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, or they say, or they all fall into this archetype of Hermes. And I'm like, okay, so are we talking about the category on the filing cabinet drawer, or are we talking about a particular entity? And from like running into kind of like hive forms of spirits and just the way that I work, the aspecting idea is kind of saying like, we can look at things in Ireland, and we can look at things in Germania, and we can look at things in ancient Greece, and we can look at things in Africa or South America and go, there's a whole bunch of people that do this thing that you and I in our shorthand might refer to as being crossroady, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a literal mesh of maybe a description of how they might look or how they appear, or that they meet at particular kinds of crossroads. Are we talking two roads forming a cross? Are we talking about two roads meeting and becoming one, a three-way? So the aspecting idea becomes then like, so is it possible that rather than some ultimate archetypal form that sits out there, some ultimate form that is showing us all of it, that we're seeing facets of, is it possible that there's an entire class of beings that do this thing and that they're everywhere?
I think so.
This is what I think.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I do think so.
This is the best that I can come up with at this point, and they kind of back me up on this. Because sometimes I'll connect to one of those entities, and not just Crossroads entities, and they'll be like, "Oh, let me hook you up with this guy." And it's like, you've made it into the computer repair shop, but you're talking to the Mac guy, and you have, you know, a PC. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about. But I'm not the guy you want trying to fix this problem." But I know that guy. You know, so this is it's an interesting thing, because then it sinks in, because you go, okay, so I believe some of what happened to me in those early days, where the Loa came through, is that it came because I knew all of these folks who were into New Orleans voodoo, and because I was looking at some other media that had some connections there. And so that like opened a little door, and they went, we could talk to that guy.
Sure.
Now, only after that whole period, which took, I think, about 6 months, as far as I can remember, only towards the end of that was I kind of really convinced that they were actually what they were presenting as. Before that, I was like, I don't know. I'm hanging out with all these people, that this is their world. Is this just the language that I know for this thing? Is this the imagery that I've already got for this thing, and that's how it's presenting? And then towards the end, I went like, no, that was what that was. But that wasn't a surface level thing. I did not accept that on the surface.
Yeah.
You know, and so that aspecting thing kind of ties in there, because you go, I met the man in black when I was 11, and there are folks who would go, okay, well, that is this particular form of the god Hermes. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but maybe they're in the same family.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't know about that. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, you know,
maybe they operate on the same wave of a kind, I guess. I don't know. You know, like
right. Yeah, no, it's kind of like, you know, not all the fish are the same fish, you know.
Yeah.
And even within species, they're not all the same fish.
Exactly.
Which is one of the things that I think becomes really fascinating if you buy, as I do, the idea that the spirits are independent and agentic beings. Like, they're doing their thing.
Agreed.
And sometimes they involve us in it.
Whether we like it or not.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that to think the reverse of that is true is very dangerous. And that's where a lot of people that get involved in spirit work, actually how they get involved in it is to go, oh, I'm going to conjure this spirit and get it to do this shit for me. It has some iffy ramifications there. That to me as an animist are very unattractive to even play with. This is not to say some people don't get great results from that, but I have my own theories about why that happens. So,
yeah, that's another one of those things that I try to imagine. You know, I know that there's vast history of the grimoire tradition and things like that, where people have the circles and the triangles and the glyphs and the timing and the planets and the hour of this and the whatever. I love you all. I can't do that kind of math. But I just can't help, as an animist minded person, like the best way to explain this is, let's say I go into ritual mode, right? And I believe I'm in a vast ecology of spirits of all sorts of kinds at different dimensions, and who knows what. They might not even be aware of my presence until I do a magical act, for all I know. Or maybe they're curious and watching, or all the above. But I go into an area to do this, and then in my head, I'm like, you go cast that circle, and you've just brought an awful lot of attention to yourself from things that you weren't there to call on. And what if they get real curious about you? What if the thing you called on and dismiss has friends that gets real curious about you? You know, and it's not a fearful thing for me. It's just like, I just think that the world that we live in is complicated. Why wouldn't theirs be too? If it's real?
I'm very much, the book that I'm working on now is heavily about spirit ecologies and about animism, much more so than the other books that I've written so far. It's very much the primary focus. And it is really interesting. One of the things that you brought up is a great way to look at it. Is it's like one of the ways that one of my earliest kind of mentors, who was teaching me ceremonial methods, said is, I said that, like, this combination of kind of sigils and seals and particular rites and incenses and all this stuff were like ways of like tuning the radio to try and get to a particular, it's like they were like different numbers on the keypad of the phone, right?
That makes
and
sense.
if you got it right, you connected. And I think my approach, I think, developed kind of counter to that in a way. Like I played with that for a while and I didn't like it. And instead I was like, I'm going to set up a ham radio station. And I'm going to start playing the music that I like. And I'm going to see who starts tuning in. And to me, this is a very clean way to work that could be catastrophic for somebody else. I don't know. For me, it's ultra clean because it's like if you're listening to the channel, we're already pretty good. And if you will put up with the playlists and you'll put up with me having my late night rants about whatever, we're better. And at the point that you actually go, I'm going to call this guy and make some requests, now we have a real relationship. And to me, that's the animist focus, is on those relationships.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
And I don't super care what that being is considered by anybody else. How they're viewed, how they're thought about, what people believe that they are for. It's like, what are you for? What am I? This is an absurd question. And yet we come down to this thing where sometimes it's like, oh yeah, love magic. This thing does love magic, and you go, well, I'm probably not great for that, but I might know the person that you should get together with. This is an animistic approach to me. Is you don't go, I gotta go find the one person who's got love down, because that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for the person you can do that thing with. And for most of us, we find that through relationships.
That's right. Yeah, I think relationship it's the key. It's been used in various times. So you hear it like getting into right relationship and that kind of stuff. But I mean, within heathenry, just spiritually speaking, in a religious context in heathenry, at the very heart of it is being in relationship with your gods or your world around you, or what have you. It's setting up that give and take, that gifting cycle. That it's a phrase that's becoming very common now, but what they're getting at is that very notion of what we're talking about is, it's recognizing that spirit is real, respecting it on its terms, saying, I give you this gift in relationship for, to build this relationship for the mutual benefit of both of us.
Yeah, no, I think that's basically the key approach to animism. And so it switches kind of the focus, I think, of how you actually, both how you think about kind of operative magic, or at least it does for me, and how you kind of do this whole interrelational aspect. because it ceases to be about tech, which is kind of the obsession that has kind of been continuously running in Magic in many ways. For most of the time I've been in it, on the more hardcore Magic, not so much the pagan Magic side. And it's usually like, why do you need tech? You need friends.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say tech, I'm not sure everybody will know what you mean. You're talking about the tools and things like that.
Yeah, one of my pet peeve is like an obsession with a million ways to do this stuff. It's the thing that drives me completely batshit. It's like, it does not make sense to me. Where somebody goes like, okay, I've got like 5 different ways of doing spells, and I'm like, then you're good.
Yeah.
Like, 5 is a lot. That's good. And it doesn't mean that you're going to use exactly the same thing, but that's enough to understand what you need to get shit done.
Right.
And if you're obsessing about, I need to massively increase my vocabulary in some way, and I need to massively increase my knowledge base in some way about the technical aspects of magical theory, that is very much not, to me, an animistic approach at all. Because to me, the animistic approach is like, no, you need some friends.
Yeah.
There's some shit that it's good to know how to do, because it helps that whole process. Mm-hmm. So, like, as you know, I'm very big on energy work. I do a lot of energy work because it's the most helpful adjunct to having functional relationships with these things. Mm-hmm. For me. But I can't remember who I was talking to recently, and I don't know whether it was recorded or not, but they said, I would love to see kind of like your compendium of charms. And I was like, oh, you think I have one? It's like, that's just a thing you learn to do. Mm-hmm. It's not the thing that you did yesterday will work today. Yeah. Everything's different now. It might, but at some point it will probably stop. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the skill is not, oh, I now need to go learn more. It's like, no, how did you get there? What were you doing? What's the way that you want to ask now? What feels right as the way that's correct in the moment? That's not about amassing piles of data.
I agree. Yeah, I was thinking about too. You said when you were talking about being in New Orleans and the Loa, and you having a conversation of sorts, and you wondering how that ends up happening. I think you're on to something when you're talking about, you're around people who are into it, and just being in that environment, being where they are very prevalent, right? Prevalently honored and worshipped and worked with. A friend of mine, Bat Colazzo, Bat's amazing. First of all, if you're listening, Bat, much love and gratitude for you in my life, friend. Anyway, but Bat has all these really cool tattoos that are themed off of Loki's stories, or Loki's children and things like that. They're very creative the way they're done. And if you don't know the stories out of Nordic myth, you wouldn't immediately recognize, the giant cat head and stuff for what it is, and just stuff like this. So anyway, Bat said something to me once, because, well, to back up a little bit, the whole notion for some reason of honoring Loki or Loki's children and things like that in wider heathenry has always been this controversial thing. And I don't really ever hear very good arguments for it. Now, if you just simply like, that's not the energy I want to work with, cool, like, do you, but don't tell someone else how to live their spiritual lives and find meaning, right? So, a big thing was going down in the Troth, and then at Troth Moo when we had it in Pennsylvania a few years ago, and it was up to me I was asked to handle all the dissenting people, to hold a special table in the dining hall before we were going to do the Grand Ensemble event, and just discuss why are you uncomfortable, and how can I make this better for you? And it went fairly well, and I just told people basically at the end of the day, if you're uncomfortable with it, remember, it's not about you every time. You also don't have to hail the thing, you can sit quietly and respectful of those who are. Anyway, Bat said something to me. What was it that Bat said? If you have a problem with Loki or Loki's children or anything, but you invite me into your spaces as a friend or a fellow heathen, then you have invited them too, whether you know it or not.
No, absolutely. And this is what I would say, because this was actually before I was in New Orleans that the Loa came through. I was in San Francisco at the time, but this crew from New Orleans had moved up, and I became very close to them. And that was very much, I believe that is really what forged that. Is it's like I ended up in kind of deep relationship with a couple of folks that had very strong ties to a couple of the Loa. And I believe that was all of that. They were like, okay, you're into my people. We're good. Right.
Yeah.
And
I think that's common.
I think it's very common. And I think it's also, my experience there was really useful, because the messaging that I kept getting from them was like, we want you to do this thing, and it's not something our people would ever do. Because I was like, why? Why are you talking to me?
We want you to dance to dubstep for us.
Whatever. It's like, I do not understand why you're talking to me. And they were basically like, yeah, this is not shit that would make sense to our people. But you, young chaos magic crazy person, might go for it. And I was like, okay, that works for me. We'll see. And it was super weird, but it was very cool. And it is that thing that syncretism is really messy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is infinitely prevalent.
Yes.
Like, how does it not be happening all the time, anytime two people that have spiritual beliefs get together?
Yes.
Like, you got to be really hard lines stuck on your shit to not let anything rub off. And that's not, I think, a great thing.
No.
I'm not suggesting that as a method. And so we're in this, I think, especially now, we're in a really weird moment. One of the things that's coming out with the books that I'm working on now are like trying to provide stuff. And I've been using the language mongrel magicians. I'm aware that some of what I'm sharing has to be prevalent in many other places, but they're not culturally accessible. And for a lot of us, I personally don't consider that the United States has a culture. It certainly doesn't have a unified one.
No, not really.
And so I'm really kind of coming at this from my view of like, I didn't come to this with a background that gave me any functional narratives or frameworks or worldviews. And I've never wanted to go and acquire those from someone else. And it is, long before I ever heard the term, I was very aware of the idea of cultural appropriation. And I did not like it. I didn't want to be involved in it. And so a big part of what these are is like, they are an attempt to kind of not generate the system or the path forward, but to perhaps open a bunch of doors towards paths forward. Because I think we really desperately need it.
I agree. I mean, my goodness, even in just your general, pick any town in America, and you've got how many different kinds of Christian churches who probably, when they're just being loud, they think they agree with each other. But if you got them in discussion with each other, you quickly find out even they have different thoughts on who God and Jesus or saints and angels, if they even acknowledge the thing, like it, even on your general street corner in America with a predominant religion in the country, you're going to find syncretism and different beliefs about the very same beings. So why wouldn't that be common in more diverse pagan polytheistic kind of systems and belief systems?
Right. And I think it's part of it is also like, I'm a big believer that there's been an intentional, particularly in the United States, but it's larger than that, move to miseducation is one thing. I actually have been referring to it as like de-educate the population. We're not just trying to give you the wrong shit. We're trying to make sure you don't have the ability to think about shit.
Right.
Which to me is like a process of like de-educating. And a lot of this has come out in kind of the consistently pushing good, evil, bad, good, white, black, whether literally or not, us, them, binary narratives. And this is not real. Like, there's nothing that works like that. Like, we think about this, it's like, how long have we been able to turn off the lights?
Yeah.
like we have this idea that there's this thing called a switch that's like real in the world outside of the modern era. And we have this belief that it's the one I always talk about, like the idea that killing is good or bad. And you go, this is what happens here. Like it's constant, it's everywhere. It's actually wrong. Everything. Does this mean that there are no moral implications for those of us that have big enough brains that we can think about this shit? Absolutely fucking not. It puts us in a different position that we go, ooh, we have to think about this shit. And we have to try and do this in a very coherent way. And that's never going to be black and white. And I think that this kind of push into that kind of false binaries leads to a ton of this stuff. Because you go, okay, if we all agree that those people are awful because we hate them because they are Christians or because they are Muslims or because they are queer or because they are female, you're wrong. And if you can't face that, that's on you. Because you can see the proof that it's not true everywhere.
Right.
And yet we're like in this particularly media and political environment that like preys on these mass generalizations. And it's like, this is just wrong thinking. And I think that as magical folks, that's something that we have to try and stay as far away from as possible. Go like, okay, probably everything is nuanced. That's a good starting place because I don't think of anything that isn't, so it's very interesting. It does like, I've always been amazed, and you and I have probably talked about it, at how much kind of like the subcultures that on the surface should be very free thinking tend to repeat the same patterns of the overculture. Which I credit Genesis Bjorage for pointing out to me in 88 or 89 or something like that. And I've never kind of been able to let go of that I can like watch people that go, you should know you were on the receiving end of that bludgeon forever. And yet as soon as we give you the right story, allowing you to pick up the giving end rather than the receiving end, you pick it up. That's weird to me. It's very weird.
I agree. Not weird in a good way either.
No, it's very it's a pathology.
Yeah. Before we get into the Patreon part, there was one thing I did want to talk to you about. I don't know how many thoughts you have on it, but I heard you say, and I wish I would have taken notes because I don't remember what podcast you were being interviewed on, but you said on that show that you felt like these days you have more in common with the devotional polytheists than most others. And, the interviewer just kind of went on about their business. But I was thinking, like, wait a second, like, how break that down? Like, what is it about devotional polytheists in you that you feel is in common? It's the devotional part that gets me when it comes to you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So what it is for me is it's that, to me, animism underlies everything. And to me, devotional polytheism is one of the spaces that fully accepts the reality and the agency of the spirits.
That's true.
And so that's what I mean by that, is it's like, I like listen to the people that I listen to, which, I cherry pick, of course, to what I like. And I go, yeah, we're not doing the same thing, but you make sense to me. Like, you're not, because I'm confused by the folks. And this is what I will put out very honestly. It's like, I did not start where I am now. So that, I do understand that. But I am a little confused by people who've been playing kind of the magic game and having connection with spirits, however they choose to perceive them, for a long period of time, that do not end up with the idea, that do not end up as animists. I don't actually understand how it works.
I'm kind of there with you. I don't get it. If you've been in this game and actually doing it, I mean, maybe that's part of it, but if you're actually out there doing it, like, and you don't come along to some point thinking this is way bigger and wilder than I imagined.
Well, I think, and to me, there's actually a reason for it. And I talk about it in this book, which is, and this is where I also get along with the devotional polytheist mindset, is that animism to me, and that kind of polytheism, and really what I'm talking about is kind of like what is referred to as hard polytheism, meaning that they believe that the gods are actually independent beings. And we might have different views on what we mean by that. But both of these things decenter humans as being necessarily the most important part of the system, which to me is very logical. Again, coming from an animist point of view, not so much, because I don't really work with deity in that way, but if I look at where we live on this planet and you go, okay, if we were to remove all the humans right now, other than some, factory and nuclear meltdowns that would occur, that would have some far-reaching issues, everybody else is fine.
Mm-hmm.
The dogs will be upset for a while, the cats will be upset for a while, but they'll get over it real fast. That to me tells us that this isn't about us.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of magic, a lot of even I think religious teachings, though theoretically they center God in whatever form they perceive that, what they're really doing is saying that because we are aware of this greater power, we are really at the center. And you can do this by thinking you're fucking badass, and you can do this by thinking that you are worthless. Both of those perspectives center you as the issue and you as the important thing. It's just whether one of them makes you feel great and whether one of them makes you feel terrible. But in both cases, you're centering yourself. And the thing that I get from magic is I don't see that. It's like, oh, yeah, no, I could go and nothing really changes. So I'm not that important, which is awesome. It's incredibly freeing.
Right.
This is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
I think some people would perceive that as a very bad thing, going like, oh, you don't have a good enough sense of self-worth. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just this massive relief that it's not all on me. It's never been all on me. It's never all been around me. All of the relationships that I have been in that did not work out, some of that was on me, but not all of it. In kind of viewing that as the starting place for kind of a magical operational spirituality, it's a very freeing thing. And that's the thing that I think I share with a lot of the polytheists is it's like, no, it's not about us. Now that side can go too far into the kind of self-abnegation thing, which is common in a lot of religions, where it's not about me at all. And I'm going, well, you're doing it, so it is. You're involved. You're part of the system. You don't get to opt out unless you're really done and you want to opt out in that way. And then you're just in a different part of the system, in my view. So that's not on the table either.
So if you're surrounded by a diversity of agentic spirits, basically, you are too. You are also
Absolutely.
an agentic spirit. You're just not any higher or lower on the food chain, depending on the circumstances and location of those others.
Absolutely. It's like, it's an interesting thing. And so, and that's kind of always, that's kind of how I approach this whole thing is like, you got to accept, I think, if you have an interest in magic or even spirituality, that you are, at least the language I use a lot is an at least semi-autonomous agentic being.
That sounds fun.
You may not have total control. You may be being run by some things you don't know. We could view these as psychologically or on other levels, but largely you do get to make some choices. You may not get to make all of them. That's okay. And so is everybody else, and so is everything else. And now things get really tricky, which to me is the beautiful aspect of this. It's not that it provides answers; it provides a very fertile ground for questioning and exploration. It really does not provide any answers that I've come across, which is cool because it keeps it very engaging and very interesting and very fun.
Agreed. Yeah, I think about. I like to contemplate the cosmic scale of things sometimes, just how fast the Earth is moving around the sun, how fast the Earth is spinning, how fast our solar system is flying through the galaxy, how fast the galaxy is moving through space. It's mind-boggling. And when you sit and contemplate the whole of the cosmos, if you can even begin to wrap your mind around this stuff, just how tiny we are in the grand scale of things. I don't know. I find, like you were talking about, I find that so freeing.
It's hugely freeing.
It's so liberating.
It is very cool to be, I think that we can kind of mix up ideas that are like emotional ideas or social ideas with much larger things. And this is understandable because we're social and emotional beings, And so I think it can be viewed, I think we can get into a place where we feel like this is saying we have no impact. And that's not true. Everything
No, that's not
has
true
impact.
either. That's right.
Everything has impact. And the cool thing about not having it all be about you, either as an individual or as a species, is it, I think, can loosen some of the concerns about fucking up.
Yeah, or doing it right.
Doing it right, or I should know. It's like, how the fuck should you know how to do this particular version of life right now? Have you looked at it recently? You think if you dumped like whoever you think was really smart, whether that is Aristotle or Marcus Aurelius or Jesus would fall down screaming if he saw this, as he should.
Yeah.
Right? And if the dude is as he was portrayed and was really a dude and all those things that I don't know, he would then scream it out and go, okay, what's the best thing I can do here? And I think this is true of all of these things that we hold up. But this is a fucking special moment. And no, you shouldn't know how to handle it. What would have prepared you for that? What possible set of circumstances would have had you handling everything like a fucking boss right now? Total detachment and like delusional states,
Right.
lots of good drugs. I don't know.
I don't know. I really don't know. I do think it's, for me anyway, I think it's great for mental health on my part. I'm not sure your mileage will be the same, but to just become very, very aware of the fact that you live on a planet that is in space, revolving around a star, and by the way, there are two black holes colliding somewhere out in space that we feel the vibrations here. I'm obsessed with that thought.
What
that means.
My version of that is is a different one, and it comes up in the book a lot, and it comes from a quote from a Utah Phillips track that he's a folk musician, and then Andy DeFranco took a lot of recordings of him mostly talking in between, like kind of his between set bouncer, and put kind of abstract music behind a lot of it, and made loops out of some of it. It's quite a brilliant thing. And he says, the past didn't go anywhere. And this is one of my major themes in my work that I hang on to. And so my version of that is going like, okay, so my ancestors were not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, living in trees, eating leaves. And a little farther back were fucking plankton, probably. Or slime molds. Like, I am the descendant of a slime mold. And I am sitting here with this pile of electronics talking to Lonnie through the ethers, drinking my fucking tea. That shit to me is hugely freeing. You go, okay, I don't know how this happened. I don't know if there's even a why this happened, in the sense of a cosmic why. But if I can kind of remember that and go like, it puts me in a different headspace about believing in my own importance without doing that reverse of moving into self-abnegation, because you're important in my life. All the people that I care about are super important in my life.
Same.
Decisions that I make are very important to lots of people all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we don't matter. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, it's not about me.
Agreed.
And I think that is a key component of animism, is sometimes having that experience where something shows up and says, hey, would you go and pick me a bunch of flowers and put them on that rock over there? And you go, sure. What did that have anything to do with? You may never know.
Yeah.
You might. You might now have a friend.
Right.
But you don't know.
But you don't know.
And that could much more be about the fact that you are open enough to hear the message and have hands with, opposable thumbs and understand what a yellow flower is, than that you are some kind of badass witch.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I think that's a good place to wrap up the regular portion, and we'll move over to Patreon and get into some nitty gritty over there for those peeps. Is there anything else that you wanted to get into before we do that, though? Something I didn't bring up? Nope.
I'm good.
All right, cool.
All is well.
And as usual, people find you at aidanwachter.com.
aidanwachter.com. I'm on Patreon, Blue Sky, still on Threads and Instagram. For a minute, we'll see.
For a minute, we'll see. All right.
Holding on, but not for dear life.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
If anybody wants to hear the rest of this conversation, please go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio. Go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership, and stay weird out there, my friends. Dun, dun, dun. Bonus audio time. You brought this up in the regular conversation. No, actually, before we get there, I haven't asked you in a long time, and the audio people just heard said, apparently my neighbors are banging on shit. I got a steady drum beat going, boom, 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 boom. I guess we're talking about ancestors. No. The first question I typically ask someone for Patreon is, what famous person's resting place do you most want to visit and why? I haven't asked you that, now I think about it, in like 10 years.
Oh, we did, but I can't remember what I said.
I don't remember what you said either.
I can't remember what I said.
Who would it be now? Do you want to hear how they just answered that question? What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit? That and many others, including what they think about the afterlife, what they may or may not do in cemeteries, what are their traditions, magical practices that have to do with the dead, folklore that surrounds their homes, and so much more, available for only $5. $5 a month. Even if I make more than one episode in a month, it's still just $5 a month at patreon.com/weirdwebradio, or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. You can find me on Instagram at weirdwebradio. You can find me on Facebook as Weird Web Radio, or come join the new, fun and exciting Weird Web Radio Facebook group. Thank you again for being here. Stay weird out there, my friends.